Your future is shaped not by what you wish for, but by what you learn for. Every day you wake up, you're presented with a simple choice: grow or stay the same. And the difference between the two: it's not about money, it's not about connections, it's not even about talent. The real difference, the one that changes everything, is learning, educating yourself, feeding your mind like your life depends on it, because it does. See, most people wait for success to show up. They wait for the perfect timing, the big break, the right opportunity. But winners don't wait. They prepare, and they do it by learning. Not once in a while, not when it's convenient, but every single day. Because when you make education a habit, your mind becomes sharper, your confidence grows stronger, and your opportunities multiply. This isn't about going back to school. It's about becoming a student of life. Reading, listening, watching, thinking. It's about learning with purpose. Real growth doesn't come from sitting still. It comes from expanding your thinking, building new skills, and staying hungry for knowledge. No matter where you are right now, you can change your direction by changing what you know. The answers you're looking for, the success you're chasing, it's all one lesson away. Today I'm going to walk you through the mindset and method of lifelong learners, people who turn knowledge into power and daily effort into lasting success. Stay with me for the next few minutes as I show you how to educate yourself every day and transform your entire life. Let's dive in. Number 1, the education that changes everything. There comes a time in life when you realize something powerful. What you don't know is costing you. Not just money, but confidence, opportunity, and progress. And once you understand that, you begin to see education in a whole new light. Not the kind you got from sitting in a classroom, but the kind that comes from choosing to learn on your own terms every single day. The truth is, the education that changes your life isn't always found in a textbook or a lecture hall. It's found in the late nights reading a book that makes you think differently. It's in the quiet moments of reflection after listening to someone wiser than you. It's in the habit of asking questions, seeking answers, and refusing to stay the same. Real education, the kind that transforms you, is intentional, it's consistent, and it's personal. Let me tell you about Mark. He worked in a warehouse, day in, day out, moving boxes, clocking in, clocking out. Most people around him stayed the same year after year, but Mark decided he wanted more. So instead of just watching TV after work, he's watching tutorials. He picked up books on business, technology, and personal growth. 1 hour a day, every day. A year later, Mark built a simple e-commerce site. 2 years later, he quit the warehouse. Now, he runs a full-time online business. What changed? His environment? No. His mindset? Yes. And that mindset was built through self-education. That's the power of learning. It turns a regular person into a resourceful person. It takes someone who's stuck and gives them tools to break through. It doesn't matter where you're starting from. If you commit to educating yourself every day, you'll outgrow the limits you once thought were permanent. See, there's a quiet strength in knowing more today than you did yesterday. It makes you dangerous in a good way. It sharpens your vision, it gives you leverage, and it builds a sense of certainty in a world full of doubt. So if you're wondering where to start with this. Learn something new every day. Read a few pages. Watch something valuable. Take notes. Reflect. Apply. Because the education that truly changes your life isn't the kind that ends with a certificate. It's the kind that keeps going. Day by day, thought by thought, action by action. And the best part, it's never too late to start. Number 2, self-education is the real advantage. In the world we live in today, the true competitive edge doesn't come from where you went to school. It doesn't come from the letters after your name or the grades you earned years ago. The real advantage, what separates those who rise from those who remain average, is self-education, the learning you choose, the knowledge you chase, the discipline to keep growing long after others have stopped. Here's the truth. Formal education may open the first few doors, But self-education builds the house you want to live in. The most successful people in the world have one thing in common. They never stop learning. They are obsessed with getting better. And they don't wait for a classroom. They create their own. Self-education is powerful because it's voluntary. No one's forcing you to read a book, listen to a podcast, or study a new skill after a long day. That's what makes it so special. When you choose to grow on your own, you're building something far more valuable than knowledge. You're building character. You're training yourself to become the kind of person success looks for. Let's talk about someone who embodies this idea, Oprah Winfrey. She didn't grow up with privilege. In fact, she faced more setbacks than most people could imagine. But one thing she never stopped doing was learning. From her earliest days as a news anchor to her rise as a media mogul, she was a student of life. She read constantly. She surrounded herself with people who challenged her thinking. She asked questions. She absorbed wisdom like a sponge. And that's one of the biggest reasons she became a global icon. She made learning her lifestyle. Most people think once they've finished school, they're done with education. They graduate and mentally clock out. They assume life experience alone will carry them forward. But life is constantly changing. Industries evolve. Technology shifts. New challenges emerge. And the people who win are the ones who stay ahead. Not because they're the smartest, but because they keep learning when others stop. Self-education isn't about knowing everything. It's about staying curious. It's about saying, I don't know that yet. It's being humble enough to admit there's more to understand and bold enough to go after it. It's not always glamorous. Sometimes it's just you in a quiet room. Sometimes it's watching a documentary instead of scrolling social media. Sometimes it's listening to an audiobook during your commute instead of zoning out. But all of it adds up, bit by bit, step by step, until one day you look back and realize you're not the same person you used to be. The beauty of self-education is that it works for anyone. You don't need a degree to read a book. You don't need permission to study your craft. You don't need someone to give you a curriculum. You build your own. And when you do, you become unstoppable. You begin to see things others miss. You ask better questions. You make better decisions. And over time, your results speak for themselves. Look around you. The world is full of people who are stuck in place because they stopped learning. They wake up, go through the motions, and repeat yesterday over and over again. But you can be different. You can be the kind of person who grows even when no one's watching, who sharpens their mind the way others sharpen tools, who prepares for success before it arrives. If you want to build a life that rises above average, self-education is not optional. It's essential. Because no one is going to hand you success, but you can prepare for it. You can train for it. You can learn for it. So start today. Pick up the book you've been putting off, watch that course, take notes on a conversation, journal your thoughts, ask more questions. Get around people who think bigger than you, and most of all, make it a habit. Not once in a while, every single day. Because the person who keeps learning never stays stuck. They keep growing, and as they grow, the world opens up in ways they never imagined. Self-education is the real advantage, and the best part, it's available to everyone. You don't need to be rich, you don't need to be famous, you just need to be hungry enough to want more and disciplined enough to go after it. Keep learning, and watch how far it takes you. Number 3. What you learn determines what you earn. There's a simple rule in life that very few people talk about. The more you learn, the more you earn. Now, that doesn't mean memorizing trivia or collecting certificates. It means learning skills that solve real problems. It means gaining knowledge that moves the needle. It means becoming more valuable in the marketplace. And when your value goes up, your income follows. Most people think their paycheck is based on hours worked, and while that might be true at the beginning, over time, it's not the hours that count, it's the value of those hours. 2 people can work 8 hours a day, but one earns minimum wage while the other earns 6 figures. What's the difference? It's not just effort, it's education. One person learned more. They mastered skills, sharpened their thinking, and became better at solving bigger problems. Let me introduce you to Jessica. She was a waitress at a small diner in Kentucky. Hardworking, friendly, but constantly struggling to make ends meet. Every month felt like a stretch. One night, after another long shift, she decided something had to change. She didn't have the time or money to go back to college, but she had internet access and a library card. So she started studying personal finance just 30 minutes a day. She read about budgeting, investing, wealth building, and financial behavior. She learned how money worked. 6 months in, she started teaching what she'd learned to a few friends. A year later, she was running weekend workshops at a local community center. Fast forward 3 years, and Jessica is now a full-time financial coach with clients across the country. Same person, same energy, but now she earns 5 times what she used to. Why? Because she learned something that people were willing to pay. That's the lesson. If you want to earn more, learn something useful, learn something valuable, learn something that the world needs and doesn't have enough of. The marketplace pays for solutions. The person who learns how to solve problems consistently, skillfully, and creatively will never be out of work. Learning changes what you're capable of, and what you're capable of determines what kind of doors open for you. The moment you invest in your skills, your understanding, and your expertise, everything begins to shift. People start noticing you. Opportunities start finding you. Your confidence grows because now you have something solid to stand on. Your knowledge. You see, money doesn't just follow hustle. It follows usefulness. And the way you become more useful is by becoming more educated, not just in theory, but in practice. Ask yourself, what skills are in demand right now? What industries are growing? What kind of people are needed in the next 5 to 10 years? Then start learning in those directions. Because where the world is going, that's where the opportunity will be. Another important point, learning also protects your income. We live in a time where jobs change fast. Industries evolve overnight. One day your role is in demand. The next day it's automated or outsourced. If you haven't been learning, you're in trouble. But if you've been growing, expanding, adapting, you stay ahead of the curve. You're not afraid of change because you've been preparing for it. The person who keeps learning is always ready to pivot. They don't wait for the storm to pass. They learn how to sail. Don't make the mistake of thinking that learning ends after high school or college. That's just the beginning. Real life begins when you realize that the best investment you'll ever make is in yourself. Not your car, not your clothes, not your weekend plans. What you put into your mind will eventually show up in your life, in your results, in your income, in your sense of purpose. You don't have to know everything, you just have to know more than most in one valuable area. That's how you create leverage. That's how you go from surviving to thriving. That's how you take control of your future. So if you want to earn more, stop chasing the money and start chasing the skill. Study it, practice it, master it. Because once you've learned it, no one can take it away from you. That knowledge becomes a part of who you are, and it will serve you for the rest of your life. What you learn determines what you earn. So learn with purpose, learn with intensity, and never stop, because the more valuable you become, the more rewarding your life will be. Number 4. Learning builds confidence and clarity. Confidence isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. And one of the most powerful ways to build it is by learning. The more you know, the more certain you become. The more certain you become, the more confident you feel. And when you're confident, the world reacts to you differently. People listen more closely, opportunities show up more often, and decisions become clearer. That's the quiet power of knowledge. It creates a solid foundation inside you that nothing on the outside can shake. When you know what you're doing, or at least know where to find the answer, you walk differently, talk differently, and live differently. Confidence is not arrogance. It's not pretending to be something you're not. It's simply being sure of what you know and comfortable with what you don't. That kind of clarity only comes through consistent, intentional learning. Let's take a look at someone who used learning to build unshakable clarity and confidence. Howard Schultz. The man turned Starbucks from a small coffee shop into a global empire. When Schultz visited Italy, he didn't just sip espresso. He studied the culture. He noticed how coffee shops were social hubs, places for conversation, connection, and community. He learned from what he saw, took notes, asked questions, and then brought those insights back to America. That simple but powerful lesson turned into a billion-dollar idea. Why? Because he learned first, then acted. His confidence to lead and scale the brand came from knowledge, not wishful thinking. Most people want clarity, but they don't realize clarity is a byproduct of learning. When you're uncertain, when you don't know what to do next, the answer isn't to wait, it's to learn. Pick up a book, watch an expert, take a course, reflect on your own habits. With every new piece of insight, the fog begins to lift. And once the fog lifts, you move with purpose. You stop second-guessing every decision. You stop relying on luck. You start relying on skill. And this doesn't just apply to business or careers. It applies to every area of life: relationships, finances, health, parenting, leadership. Whatever you want to get better at, the first step is always the same. Learn. Learn how it works. Learn what others have done. Learn from your mistakes. The more you understand, the less fear you feel. And the less fear you feel, the more freely and fully you live. Confidence built on knowledge is steady. It's not loud or showy. It doesn't need to prove itself. It just knows. When you walk into a room knowing that you've prepared, that you've studied, that you've sharpened your thinking, there's no need to fake it. That's real strength. And it can't be faked or forced. It must be earned. Learning also helps you handle criticism. When you've done the work and built the understanding, other people's opinions carry less weight. You no longer feel like an imposter. You don't need everyone's approval. You trust yourself. That self-trust is priceless in a world where doubt is cheap and easy to come by. Now let's talk about clarity, because clarity is what helps you cut through noise. When everyone's shouting advice, when the world feels chaotic, clarity allows you to filter what matters. And clarity is the result of understanding. The more you learn about your goals, your values, your path, the easier it becomes to say yes to the right things and no to the wrong ones. Imagine this. You want to start a new business, but you don't know where to begin. That lack of knowledge causes hesitation. Fear creeps in. Doubt takes over. But now imagine you've spent the last 3 months studying successful entrepreneurs, reading about strategy, marketing, and leadership. Suddenly, the fog begins to clear. You don't have all the answers, but you've got direction. You're not frozen anymore, you're moving. That's the power of learning. It doesn't give you every step, but it gives you the courage to take the next one. Confidence isn't a personality trait, it's a product of preparation. And learning is preparation. It's mental rehearsal. It's building an inner library you can lean on when life throws curveballs. The more you learn, the more equipped you are to solve problems, to lead, to act, and action rooted in understanding is how great things get built. So if you want to feel more confident, don't wait for it. Learn your way into it. Build it brick by brick, book by book, lesson by lesson. The best part, it never runs out. Confidence grows with you, and the more you learn, the more it compounds, until one day the version of you who was once afraid to speak up is now leading the conversation. Learning builds confidence. Learning builds clarity, and both of those things build a life worth living. So keep learning and let your confidence do the talking. Number 5, your mind is a muscle. Train it daily. If someone told you they wanted to run a marathon but never trained, you'd think they were joking. You'd say, you have to prepare for something like that. You have to build endurance, strengthen your body, condition yourself daily. And yet people expect their minds to perform at high levels without ever exercising them. They want to solve big problems, make smart decisions, and stay sharp without doing the mental work it takes to stay ready. The truth is, your mind is just like a muscle. If you don't use it, it weakens. If you feed it junk, it slows down. If you stop challenging it, it stops growing. But when you train it daily, by reading, reflecting, learning new skills, and surrounding yourself with better ideas, it becomes powerful. It becomes sharper, stronger, and more prepared to lead your life where you want it to go. Let me introduce you to David. He spent over 2 decades in the Marine Corps. When he retired, he was physically strong, but mentally stuck. Civilian life was different. He didn't have a mission anymore. And for a while, he drifted. But then something clicked. He realized that to lead a new kind of life, he needed a new kind of strength, mental strength. So he began reading. Philosophy, psychology, business, leadership. He journaled daily. He took online courses. Within a year, David launched a leadership coaching practice, helping other veterans transition into powerful civilian careers. What changed? His environment. No, his mental training. See, David didn't stop exercising. He just switched from lifting weights to lifting his thinking. And that's exactly what you and I must do. Daily mental training is the key to building a strong, clear, and capable mind. But here's where most people go wrong. They only learn when they're forced to. When there's a test, a deadline, or a problem to solve. They cram, they panic, and then they forget. But real learning isn't cramming. It's not last-minute effort. It's a habit. It's the quiet decision to train your mind the same way you train your body, consistently. Think of it like this. Reading 10 pages a day doesn't sound like much, but do that for a year. And you've read over 3,600 pages, several full-length books. Listening to a 20-minute podcast on your morning commute might seem small, but 5 days a week, that's 100 minutes of fresh ideas shaping your mindset. Writing down 3 lessons every night before bed takes less than 5 minutes. But over time, that's a library of wisdom built from your own life experience. The key isn't intensity, it's consistency. Just like a single gym session won't get you fit. A single burst of inspiration won't sharpen your mind. But small efforts done daily lead to massive transformation. A trained mind sees things differently. It spots opportunities faster. It processes information more clearly. It handles stress more calmly. It makes decisions more confidently. And perhaps most importantly, it stays humble enough to keep growing. We live in a time when distraction is easy. Social media, endless notifications, clickbait news. It all competes for your attention. But you can't afford to spend your energy on things that make you reactive and reflective. You can't let your mind get lazy. Not when the world is moving fast. Not when the challenges ahead require strong, prepared thinkers. You need to train like your future depends on it. Because it does. So how do you build a routine for mental training? Start simple. Read something challenging every day. Even for 10 minutes. Study subjects that stretch your thinking. Write your thoughts. Ask better questions. Seek conversations that grow you. Limit mindless media and replace it with purposeful input. It's not about being perfect. It's about being intentional. Remember, a trained body can carry weight, but a trained mind can carry vision. And when life gets heavy, and it will, it's your mindset that determines whether you bend or break. A well-fed, well-trained mind becomes your anchor. It holds you steady in chaos. It helps you pivot when others panic. And it keeps you focused when everything else says, give up. If you want to rise above the average, you have to outlearn the average. And that means treating your mind like what it is. A tool, a muscle, a weapon, and a gift. But like any gift, it needs to be sharpened, fed, exercised. Every day is an opportunity to get mentally stronger, to think more clearly, to grow more deeply. And over time, that compound growth will change your life from the inside out. So train your mind daily, not just for success, but for strength, resilience, and wisdom. Because the stronger your mind, the greater your future. Number 6, learn with purpose, not just curiosity. Curiosity is a beautiful thing. It gets you started, but purpose is what keeps you going. There's a difference between learning for entertainment and learning for transformation. One passes the time. The other changes your life. If you want your education to lead somewhere meaningful, you have to learn with purpose. You have to know why you're learning, what you're aiming for, and how it connects to the life you want to build. So many people get stuck in the trap of passive learning. They binge watch videos, flip through articles, scroll through motivational quotes. And while it feels productive, it's not always purposeful. They gather knowledge, but they don't apply it. They take notes, but they don't take action. They become information rich, but execution poor. And that's the danger, confusing motion with progress. Just because you're consuming content doesn't mean you're growing. Purposeful learning is different. It starts with intention. You ask yourself, what problem am I trying to solve? What outcome am I aiming to achieve? What kind of person do I want to become? When your learning has a clear aim, it sharpens your focus. It gives your efforts direction. And it makes everything you learn more valuable, because now it's connected to your future. Let me give you a powerful example from the past. Thomas Edison. He didn't invent the light bulb because he was casually curious about electricity. He had a goal, a vision, a deep sense of purpose. He was determined to create affordable, accessible lighting for everyone. That purpose drove him to run thousands of experiments, to study chemistry, physics, and engineering, and to keep going even after countless failures. Edison didn't just learn for the sake of learning. He learned with a mission, and that's what led him to make history. The same principle applies to your life. If you want to get in shape, don't just read fitness blogs endlessly. Learn what works for your body and then apply it. If you want to improve your finances, don't just follow 10 different money gurus. Study one system, master it, and take action. If you want to start a business, don't spend all your time watching entrepreneur interviews. Choose a path, learn the necessary skills, and begin. Purposeful learning is focused, it's disciplined, and it's tied to action. Another mistake people make is waiting until they feel like learning. But motivation isn't always reliable. Purpose is. When you know why you're learning, you don't need to be constantly inspired. You're anchored by intention. You learn because it moves you closer to your goals. You read because it expands your possibilities. You study because it helps you show up stronger in life. And here's the best part. When you learn with purpose, everything sticks deeper. You retain more. You connect ideas faster. You see how one lesson applies to 5 different areas of your life. That's because your brain isn't just collecting information. It's organizing it around something that matters to you. Purpose is the filter that turns information into wisdom. Let's be clear. There's nothing wrong with learning for fun. Exploration is part of growth. But if you're serious about building a better life, you have to be strategic. You have to know what season you're in, what skills you need to level up, and what gaps in your knowledge are holding you back. Otherwise, you'll spend your time chasing scattered ideas and never making real progress. So how do you start learning with more purpose? Start by identifying your goals. What do you want to improve in the next 6 months? Where do you feel stuck? What are you avoiding because you don't feel confident yet? Then build a learning plan around that. Find the books, courses, or mentors that specialize in that area. Set daily or weekly learning targets. And most importantly, put what you learn into practice right away. Action is what turns learning into momentum. Purposeful learning also changes the way you experience setbacks. When you're learning with a goal in mind, mistakes become lessons. Delays become preparation. Every challenge becomes a chance to refine your understanding. Instead of quitting when things get hard, you lean in because you know what you're working toward. Remember, the world doesn't reward people who know the most. It rewards those who use what they know to solve real problems. The most successful people don't learn to impress. They learn to improve. They don't aim to be the smartest in the room. They aim to be the most useful. And that's what sets them apart. So don't just learn to feel smart. Learn to get strong. Learn to build. Learn to move forward. Because when your learning is fueled by purpose, you'll never run out of energy. You'll never feel lost. And you'll never stop growing. Let curiosity spark the fire, but let purpose keep it burning. Number 7, learn faster by surrounding yourself with smarter people. You can read all the books you want, watch all the tutorials, and listen to every podcast. But if you really want to accelerate your growth, surround yourself with people who are ahead of you. Smarter people, sharper thinkers, doers, builders, mentors. People who've been where you want to go. Because growth isn't just about what you learn alone. It's also about who you learn from. Most people stay stuck, not because they're lazy, but because they stay surrounded by the same level of thinking. They hang around people who think small, complain often, and resist change. And what happens? They absorb that energy. They pick up the habits. They adopt the limitations. Without realizing it, they start believing that their environment is the limit of their potential. But the moment you step into a room with people who think bigger than you, everything changes. Suddenly you realize how much more is possible. You hear conversations that stretch your perspective. You watch how they handle problems, how they approach opportunities, how they carry themselves, and you begin to rise. That's not coincidence. That's exposure. And exposure creates expansion. Let me tell you a story about Emily. She was in her mid-20s, running a small online clothing shop from her apartment in Denver. Sales were modest, and growth was slow. She had ambition, but no real strategy. One day she heard about a local entrepreneur networking event. At first she hesitated. She didn't feel qualified, but something in her said go, so she showed up, nervous, unsure, and wide-eyed. That night changed her life. She met 3 business owners who were years ahead of her. They weren't just friendly, they were generous with their insight. One of them shared how to scale through partnerships. Another showed her how to improve her product margins. They talked about mindset, leadership, customer experience, all things she hadn't considered before. But more than that, they believed in growth. They lived it. And that belief started to rub off on her. Within 6 months, Emily rebranded her business, doubled her monthly revenue, and hired her first employee. What sparked it all? A decision to surround herself with people who thought on a higher level. Here's the lesson. When you spend time around smarter people, you start asking better questions. You stop settling for surface-level answers. You begin to challenge your assumptions. And when your questions get better, your life does too. You also gain something else. Speed. Learning from books is powerful, but learning from people is fast. A single conversation can give you the clarity you've been missing for months. A mentor's advice can save you from making a costly mistake. A peer's perspective can unlock a new way of seeing your problem. That kind of insight can't always be found on a page. Sometimes it comes from shared experience. But here's the catch. You have to seek it out. Smart people don't always come knocking. You have to be intentional about getting around them. Join a mastermind group. Attend workshops. Volunteer at events. Ask someone you admire to coffee. Be bold enough to say, I want to learn from you. And be humble enough to listen when they speak. Now, this doesn't mean you stop thinking for yourself or blindly follow advice. It means you value wisdom. You recognize that growth is a team sport, that iron sharpens iron, that when you surround yourself with greatness, it forces you to level up. And let's not forget, this works both ways. As you grow, you become the smarter person in someone else's life. Your learning, your experience, your mindset becomes someone else's turning point. That's the beauty of growth. It's contagious. You rise and others rise with you. One of the quickest ways to see what kind of future you're headed toward is to look at the people around you. Are they learning, growing, challenging you, or are they stuck, stagnant, and satisfied with average? If you want to elevate your life, you need to elevate your circle. So take inventory. Who are you learning from? Who's ahead of you that can pull you up? Who can you humble yourself around, not to compete with, but to grow from? And if you don't have those people yet, go find them. They're out there, waiting, just like you. In the end, personal growth isn't just personal. It's relational. And it's deeply influenced by the company you keep. Learn from the best. Let their thinking stretch yours. Let their stories shape your path. Let their excellence inspire your own. Because the fastest way to grow is to surround yourself with people who won't let you stay the same. Number 8. Reading for 30 minutes a day will change your life. There's a simple habit that has changed more lives than we'll ever be able to count. Reading, not scrolling, not skimming, not clicking through headlines, but actually sitting down and reading with focus and intention. Just 30 minutes a day. That's it. It might not sound revolutionary, but over time, it becomes one of the most powerful habits you can build. It sharpens your thinking, strengthens your discipline, and expands your world far beyond your daily routine. The reason this works isn't just about gaining information, it's about rewiring your mind. When you read every day, you're training your brain to go deep instead of wide. You're learning to focus, to slow down, to engage. And in a world that moves 100 miles an hour, that kind of focus is rare and valuable. Let's look at someone who proves the power of this habit. Tony Robbins. Before he became a household name, before the stadiums and the stages and the best-selling books, he was just a hungry teenager with a library card. He didn't grow up with wealth or access. What he had was curiosity and discipline. Tony read everything he could get his hands on. Biographies, psychology, business, success strategies. And it was those hours spent reading day after day that gave him the foundation he would later use to build an empire. He often says, leaders are readers, and he lived it before he ever taught it. Here's what most people don't understand. The benefits of reading compound. One good idea leads to another. One lesson builds on the next. And before long, you're not just thinking differently. You're acting differently. You start making decisions from a place of wisdom instead of emotion. You recognize patterns. You speak with more clarity. You approach problems with solutions instead of stress. But let's be real. Most people don't read consistently. They say they don't have time, but they do. They just spend it elsewhere. On social media, on TV, on distractions that feel urgent, but do nothing to improve their future. 30 minutes a day is not much. That's one sitcom. That's the time you spend waiting in line, sitting in traffic, or lying in bed scrolling. And if you use that time, just that small window, to read something valuable, your life would begin to shift. Now, not all reading is created equal. Purpose matters. Fiction has its place. Imagination, empathy, creativity. But when it comes to personal growth, business, mindset, finance, or leadership, you need to be intentional. Read things that stretch you, authors who challenge your thinking, ideas that make you pause, reflect, and apply. That's where the magic happens. Not just in what you read, but in what you do with what you read. Reading also changes your identity. You begin to see yourself differently. You start to carry knowledge others don't. You enter conversations with insights most people don't have, and that builds confidence. Not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you've done the work. You've earned the understanding, and it shows. Think of reading like investing. Each session is a small deposit. At first, the account grows slowly, but one day, it hits a tipping point. And now the returns are massive. A decision you make at work that lands a promotion. A perspective shift that saves your relationship. A business idea that changes your career. You trace it back, and it all started with a chapter you read one morning. That's the kind of return books can give you. If you're willing to show up daily. One of the greatest things about reading is that it puts you in the minds of giants. You get to learn from the most successful, the most brilliant, the most creative people across history and across the globe. You can study Abraham Lincoln's leadership, Maya Angelou's resilience, Steve Jobs' innovation, Warren Buffett's discipline, all in the quiet of your own home. Where else can you do that? So here's the challenge. Commit to 30 minutes a day. Make it a non-negotiable. Put it in your calendar. Protect it like a meeting with your future self. Because that's exactly what it is. Choose books that align with where you want to go, who you want to become, and what you want to master. Keep a journal. Write down ideas. Review your highlights. Apply what you learn. Don't wait for a crisis to start learning. Don't wait for a big opportunity to start preparing. Start now, quietly, consistently. Let 30 minutes a day become the secret weapon in your success. Because while the world rushes, you're growing. While others react, you're reflecting. And while most people stay stuck, you're rising. Reading for 30 minutes a day won't just change how you think, it will change who you become. So grab a book, turn the page, and begin building a life no one else saw coming, but you did. One paragraph at a time. Number 9. Learn to solve, not to impress. We live in a world where it's easy to look smart, but much harder to be smart. A clever quote, a fancy term, a surface-level understanding, that might get you attention, but it won't get you results. If you want to build a life of value and meaning, you have to stop learning just to sound intelligent and start learning to solve real problems. Because at the end of the day, it's not how much you know, it's what you do with what you know. Learning should lead to action. If all your knowledge stays in your head, it's wasted. The real power of learning comes when it translates into better decisions, clearer thinking, faster problem solving, and stronger execution. That's what separates the people who talk about change from the ones who create it. Take Michael, for example. He's a mechanic from Ohio. Grew up fixing cars with his father. For years, he made a good living doing what he knew. But he started noticing something. More and more customers were asking about electric vehicles. At first, he brushed it off, thought it was a trend that would pass. But then he made a decision. He started learning everything he could about EV technology. After work, he'd watch videos, read manuals, study battery systems, and talk to other mechanics who had already made the switch. Within a year, Michael had completely pivoted his skill set. He wasn't just fixing cars. He was now consulting on EV conversions, partnering with local dealerships, and even teaching workshops. His income doubled, his confidence soared, and his business was future-proofed. Not because he wanted to sound smart, but because he learned to solve a growing problem. That's the shift we all need to make, from performing to producing, from knowing to doing, from looking impressive to being effective. People don't pay for information, they pay for transformation. They pay for results. And the people who can deliver those results are the ones who succeed. Too often, people get caught in the trap of intellectual entertainment. They read books, attend webinars, listen to podcasts, but never apply what they learn. They're filled with ideas, but empty on action. And while that might make you feel productive, it's not what moves the needle. Learning without action is just a distraction. It gives you the illusion of progress without the reality of it. To learn to solve, you have to start thinking differently. Every time you pick up new information, ask yourself, how can I use this? Where does this apply in my life? What problem can this help me solve? That's when learning becomes alive. It's not something you consume, it's something you use. This mindset doesn't just apply to your job, it applies to every area of life. Your finances, your health, your relationships, your time management. Every challenge you face is asking for a better solution. And those solutions are already out there. In books, in videos, in conversations, in mentors. The question is, are you learning with the intent to apply? The most valuable people in any company, community, or team are the problem solvers. They're the ones who step in when others freeze. They don't always have the loudest voice, but they bring clarity. They make things work, and they do it because they've trained themselves to learn differently. Not to impress, but to improve. Let's be honest. Solving problems isn't always glamorous. Sometimes it means rolling up your sleeves, asking the hard questions, facing the facts, and digging deeper than most people are willing to go. But if you're willing to do that, if you're willing to go beyond the surface, you'll create results that others can't. And those results speak louder than any degree, any title, or any quote ever could. Learning to solve also builds credibility. When people know you can deliver, they trust you. They seek you out. They refer you. And suddenly, doors open that used to be locked. Not because you marketed yourself perfectly, but because your results did the marketing for you. So here's the challenge. The next time you learn something new, don't just admire it. Apply it. Don't just write it down. Live it out. Don't just highlight it. Practice it. Learning isn't about what looks good on paper. It's about what works in real life. Learn to solve. Learn to fix things. Learn to make better decisions. Build better systems. Create better outcomes. Because when you become a person who learns for impact, you never run out of opportunities. The world is full of problems waiting for someone to rise up and say, I can handle that. Be that person. And remember, those who learn to solve will always have a place at the table, because results never go out of style. Number 10. Keep learning or fall behind. There's a harsh truth about life that many people ignore. If you're not learning, you're falling behind. The world isn't slowing down. It's moving faster than ever. New technologies, new industries, new challenges, new ways of thinking. The people who grow are the ones who adapt, and the ones who adapt are the ones who keep learning. If you stop learning, you don't just pause your progress. You start to lose your edge. You start slipping backward while others move ahead. We've all seen it happen. Someone gets comfortable. They learn enough to do their job, enough to get by, and then they stop growing. At first, everything seems fine, but slowly, the gap begins to widen. Others start outpacing them, thinking faster, solving problems better, creating more value. Before long, that person who once had potential is now playing catch-up in a world that no longer waits. Now let's look at someone who chose the opposite path. Reed Hastings, the co-founder of Netflix. When Netflix first started, it was a DVD rental company. But Hastings didn't get stuck in that model. He saw the rise of streaming. He saw where technology and consumer behavior were heading. So he learned everything he could about digital platforms, content licensing, global distribution, and user experience. While other companies held on to the past, Hastings leaned into the future. And because of that, Netflix didn't just survive the shift, it led it. That's what lifelong learning does. It prepares you for change. It makes you relevant. It keeps you in the game. Falling behind doesn't happen overnight. It happens gradually, quietly. One day without learning turns into a week. A week turns into a year. And before you know it, the skills that once set you apart now make you average. The knowledge that once gave you an advantage is now outdated. The mindset that once kept you growing has been replaced by routine and comfort. That's the danger of stopping. You don't just stop moving, you start fading. The good news, the fix is simple. Start learning again. Pick up the book. Rewatch that course. Ask the tough questions. Get curious about your weaknesses. Challenge your own thinking. It doesn't matter how long it's been. It only matters that you start. People often say, I don't have time to learn. But what they really mean is, I don't see the value in learning right now. Because we always find time for what we value. If something's important to you, you make it happen. If your future is important, your learning has to be a priority. Even if it's 20 minutes a day. Even if it's one new concept a week. Growth doesn't demand perfection. It demands consistency. Learning is like brushing your teeth. You don't do it once and expect a lifetime of results. You do it daily because you know the cost of neglect. The same applies to your mind. If you don't sharpen it, it gets dull. And a dull mind can't cut through the complexity of modern life. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room. You just need to be the person who never stops improving. Because in a world where most people settle, the learner always stands out, always rises, always leads. Learning also gives you options. When you keep expanding your skills and understanding, you create flexibility in your life. If your industry changes, you're ready. If a new opportunity arises, you're prepared. If the market shifts, you shift with it. Lifelong learners don't panic when things change. They pivot, they adjust, they grow. And it's not just about careers. This applies to your relationships, your finances, your mindset, your health. If you want your life to keep getting better, your knowledge has to keep getting deeper. Growth in any area starts with learning in that area. Let's also talk about the mindset that comes with learning. When you keep learning, you stay humble. You recognize that there's always more to understand, always another level to reach. That humility keeps your ego in check. It keeps you teachable. And teachable people are unstoppable because they're always getting better. So ask yourself honestly, are you still learning or have you been coasting? Are you challenging yourself or are you running on yesterday's knowledge? Are you pushing your limits or are you living in your comfort zone? If you've paused your growth, this is your wake-up call. Get back in the game. Reignite your curiosity. Start learning again. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Because the life you want is going to require a better version of you. And that version is waiting on the other side of learning. Keeping or fall behind. That's the choice. That's the reality. But the beauty is, the power is in your hands. You don't need permission. You don't need a classroom. You just need a decision, a commitment, a few minutes a day. Because the more you learn, the more you grow. And the more you grow, the more capable you become of living the life you were meant for. Keep learning, and the world will keep opening up to you, one lesson at a time. Here's the truth. Your greatest asset is not your job, your bank account, or your connections. It's your mind. And the more you educate that mind, the more powerful your life becomes. When you make learning a daily habit, you don't just gather information, you unlock transformation. You change the way you think, the way you respond, and ultimately, the way you live. Look back at everything we've covered. The difference between people who rise and people who remain stuck often comes down to one thing: who kept learning. Learning gives you an edge. It builds confidence, creates clarity, and gives you the tools to solve real-world problems. It separates those who merely wish for success from those who prepare for it. But here's what's even more important. Education isn't a phase, it's a lifestyle. And the moment you accept that, your life begins to change. Not in loud, dramatic ways, but in steady, compounding shifts. One book, one lesson, one new idea at a time. That's how leaders are built. That's how wealth is created. That's how breakthroughs are born. You don't need to know everything today. You just need to stay committed to growing a little more every day. Because knowledge stacks, habits compound, and consistency over time builds an unstoppable version of you. So ask yourself, what could your life look like 6 months from now if you read for 30 minutes every day? What new skills could you learn? What old habits could you replace? What future could you begin shaping? This is not about cramming your brain with facts. It's about feeding your future. It's about showing up for yourself, day after day, with discipline, hunger, and humility. The world belongs to the learners, to those who stay curious, who stay teachable, who stay determined to get better, not just for the sake of knowing more, but for the purpose of becoming more. So keep learning, read the book, ask the question, try the thing, stretch your thinking, feed your mind, and never stop growing. Because when you educate yourself every day, you elevate your life in every way.